Hello. Ivy Cottage by E.J.Taylor. For as long as Violet can remember, she's lived with Miss Biscuit in the big white house at the top of Primrose Hill. Miss Biscuit is the nanny there. Violet Pickles is a rag doll. Except she's not an ordinary rag doll. She can write and talk and has very definite ideas about how most things should be done. Her eyes are blue and she wears glasses. She has long brown hair, which is beautiful, and freckles, which she doesn't like. Over the years, Violet and Miss Biscuit have looked after many children. Miss Biscuit would take them for long walks and prepare their lunch and tuck them into bed at night. Violet would read them stories and give them very good advice. They were not always happy to hear what she had to suggest. So Violet would say, "I'm only telling you this for your own good." And usually she was right. It was a way of life that Violet loved. She didn't think it would ever change. But one day, without warning, Miss Biscuit decided to retire. They were having tea on the porch when Miss Biscuit told Violet that they were moving to the country. Violet nearly fell off her chair. At first she laughed and said, "Oh, don't be silly. We've always lived in the city. What on earth would we do in the country?" Miss Biscuit put down her cup of tea and replied, "I have planned everything. We will live in the cottage that my Uncle Henry left me. We can buy a goat and plant a vegetable garden and a strawberry patch, even some flowers. The country is full of wonderful things." Violet couldn't believe her ears. Miss Biscuit got up, cleared the teacups and took the tray into the kitchen. Violet just sat on her chair for hours and stared at the fern. Every day while Miss Biscuit packed, Violet tried to persuade her to stay. Every night, failing that, she cried herself to sleep. She soon realised that Miss Biscuit was determined to go, and crying only gave her the hiccups. They left the big white house in the town and drove to the train station. Miss Biscuit had 2 suitcases, a hat box and her bicycle. Violet took a small suitcase, her teddy bear and a picnic hamper, which contained her favourite books, a paint set and a feather pillow, her blue blanket and a silk ribbon. On the train, Miss Biscuit explained their route, adding that she had written to Mr. Bickerstaff, an old friend of her Uncle Henry's. Mr. Bickerstaff owned the general store and would meet them and drive them to the cottage. Violet sat by the window and tried not to cry. Violet fell asleep. When she woke up, the train had arrived at the station. She looked a little puzzled as they stepped onto the platform. "Well, there's no one here," she said, and she was right. They waited patiently for over an hour. Finally, Miss Biscuit stood up. "I think we had better get to the cottage on our own," she said. "But we don't know the way," said Violet. Miss Biscuit smiled. "We'll find it." And she began stacking her luggage onto the back of the bicycle. Violet looked worried. "It seemed like an awful lot to keep balance," she said. "We'll manage," said Miss Biscuit. "Finding the cottage is our main concern. Let's concentrate on that and let the little things take care of themselves." She sat Violet in the basket on the handlebars and off they went. Miss Biscuit was enjoying the ride. Violet was just beginning to relax when they crossed the bridge and came to a very steep hill. Down they went, faster and faster, Violet's hair blowing in the wind, and Miss Biscuit nearly lost her hat when suddenly there was a loud pop. "Oh dear," said Miss Biscuit, "I think the tyre has gone flat." The bicycle began to swerve, and before they knew it, they were across the road and into the ditch. Miss Biscuit and Violet flew into the air. cried Miss Biscuit. Fortunately, she had her umbrella, which she opened quickly. She and Violet floated down to a field and landed with a thump. Miss Biscuit sat up and straightened her hat. "My goodness," she chuckled. "Are you okay, Violet?" Yes, I think I am," was the answer. "Good. Then let's collect our things and be off. We've passed the bridge, so the woods can't be far." "Oh, no," cried Violet. "What's the matter?" asked Miss Biscuit. "Look, the bicycle. The wheel has come off." Miss Biscuit turned and looked. "Oh, dear. Well, never mind. We'll just have to walk." "Walk?" cried Violet in disbelief. Miss Biscuit stood up. "Now, Violet, try to cheer up, and remember, these little things are sent to try us." They reached the woods at sunset, and they tried to hurry through while they still had some light. The sky grew darker until all they could see was the shadows in the trees. "It's creepy in here," said Violet, and suddenly she screamed, "Ah, what's that over there?" "It's only an owl," said Miss Biscuit. They continued quietly and listened to the sounds in the dark. Miss Biscuit stopped. "I can hear the river. See that stone fence? We've reached the other side of the woods. The cottage is just up on that hill." They opened the gate and hurried up a narrow path. "Oh, I can't believe it," cried Violet. "We're here at last." And then she paused. "Oh, where's the cottage? I can't see anything but trees." Miss Biscuit shook her head. "Well, I don't understand. It's got to be here." "Oh, it's no use searching in the dark. We'll sleep under my umbrella and have another look in the morning." Violet was horrified. "Sleep on the ground?" "Yes," replied Miss Biscuit. "We brought your blue blanket. It won't be so bad." "Won't be so bad?" cried Violet. "I can't think of anything worse than sleeping on the ground." At that moment, it began to rain. The next morning, the sun was shining and the birds were singing. However, it was the loud noises in the distance that woke them up. "Bang, bang, bang! We're being attacked!" over her head. Miss Biscuit walked to the road. Pop, bang, hiss! The sounds were getting louder. Slowly, a rickety old car appeared. There was another loud bang, and it stopped at the gate. "Good morning. You must be Miss Biscuit." "Yes, I am. And you must be Mr. Bickerstaff." "That's right," he smiled. "Sorry I missed your train. This old contraption broke down yesterday on my way to the station. I just got it running again." "Oh, don't worry," said Miss Biscuit. "We found the way here, but now we can't find the cottage." Mr. Bickerstaff laughed. "I'll show you where it is." "Violet, this is Mr. Bickerstaff," said Miss Biscuit. "He's going to help us find the cottage." "Hello," said Violet. "It's kind of you to help, but I'm afraid the cottage has disappeared, and without a home we'll be forced to go back to the city." Mr. Bickerstaff smiled. "Look over there," he said, "and tell me what you see." "I see some trees and lots of ivy," replied Violet. "Walk very close to the ivy and look again." "Well, I see more ivy and... Eek! 3 brown ants!" Violet waited for the ants to move and carefully peeked under an ivy leaf. "Oh dear," she sighed. "What is it?" asked Miss Biscuit. "Bricks," said Violet, not at all pleased. "And that's it. You've found the cottage. It's under all that ivy." Miss Biscuit began to laugh. "It was right here all the time," she said. "Well, it's going to need a lot of work," said Violet. Miss Biscuit stood back to have a better look. "What do you think, Mr. Bickerstaff?" "Well, first you'll have to cut all the ivy away." "Maybe not," said Miss Biscuit. "I like the ivy. Why don't we clip it around the doors and windows and leave the rest as it is? Good idea, he replied. Let's get started. In a short time, they'd pulled away enough of the ivy to open the front door. It was dark inside, but Violet found a candle. Miss Biscuit discovered a large pair of scissors in the kitchen. They opened the windows and snipped away at the heavy growth of leaves covering them. Soon the inside of the cottage was filled with sunlight. Oh, it's beautiful, said Miss Biscuit. It's just how I remembered it. They explored the cottage from top to bottom. There was dust and cobwebs, but everything seemed to be in working order. Mr. Bickerstaff cleaned the chimney and they built a fire. Soon every room was warm and welcoming. In a few days it began to feel like home, although Violet insisted that her bed was uncomfortable. They were ready to start the garden when it began to rain. Violet was relieved. She didn't like getting her hands dirty, and she could catch up on some reading instead. It rained for days and days. Oh, good, said Violet. There's nothing for me to do. Miss Biscuit picked up her sewing basket and a jar of old buttons, a flour sack and a ball of red yarn. Will you excuse me for a while, she said, and walked into the kitchen and closed the door. Violet was puzzled. Hours passed. Violet sat by the window, watching the rain. At 5 o'clock, Miss Biscuit came out of the kitchen. Close your eyes and count to 10. Violet counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. She opened her eyes. Sitting on the chair opposite her was another rag doll. Oh, she's funny looking, said Violet. What's her name? She doesn't have one yet, said Miss Biscuit. Oh, I'm good at names. Violet thought for a moment. She has a button nose and hair the colour of rubies, and rubies are very rare. How about Ruby Buttons? Well, she's kind of rare, said Violet. All right, we'll call her Ruby Buttons. There she is, that's Ruby. Ruby sat motionless on the chair. Do you think she can speak? Asked Violet. Why don't you ask her? Said Miss Biscuit. Violet leaned forward. Terrible weather we're having. There was no reply. Cat got your tongue? Said Violet. Miss Biscuit stood up. Don't be rude, Violet. Perhaps she's cold. I'll put on some more wood for the fire. The log was heavy. It dropped with a thud. Cinders and ash flew into the air. Suddenly there was a loud tissue. Oh, excuse me. Ruby looked up. Violet and Miss Biscuit said, hello. Then she climbed down from her chair. Oh, what a beautiful room, she said. Well, I'm glad you like it. Are you hungry? Said Miss Biscuit. Oh, yes, I am. Wonderful. Then follow me. The kitchen was warm and full of good smells. There were flowers and candles on the table with 3 place settings of Miss Biscuit's best silver and china on a white tablecloth. Miss Biscuit poured some apple cider and raised her glass. I'd like to make a toast, she said. Welcome to Ivy Cottage. Here's to Biscuit, Buttons and Pickles. And they all sat down for dinner.